Okay, last one, Earth's Creation by Emily Kame Kungware, 1994. Synthetic polymer paint on canvas. This is a very, 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 very large work. No, I don't have dimensions, but it's. I'll give you a photo that I'll show you a photo that gives you some contextual, so you can get a sense of how large it is. It should remind you in terms of size of some of Pollock's really large works. She is, or was, she died. It was an Aboriginal painter, and that's how she's kind of classified. From Australia, part of the the native people who were there, okay, so let me show you that contextual image. Yeah, so there's our piece, and you can see two people close to it. So you can see it's very large. But you can also see from this piece that she's down in it, This is how she made her painting. She got down on the ground and kind of sat with them. She had a long history of painting traditionally, and it wasn't until a bit later when this, which I'll get to in just a second. I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, so we can see in terms of form, we have very kind of gestural marks. It's a very physical kind of painting, as you can see, she's actually down there in the paint. We can see the movement of her hands and her body over the work, and so she's very physically connected, intimately connected with her artwork. That would tie back to kind of traditional body painting, which she had engaged in as well. She had done that for years before she started painting on fabric or canvas. So she was born around 1910. She spent most of her life in an isolated community. I'm not sure, but I believe it was kind of one of those reservation, not a reservation kind of things. Again, Europeans come in and take over. So she was self-taught. I'll talk about an artist experience that she had that helped kind of make her famous. But she was a self-taught painter, trained in traditional painting techniques, ceremonial painting. And she rose to prominence. We'll hear about that in just a moment. And so it was really only at the end of her life that she had this kind of big famed career. So I don't know that was, anyway, we'll talk a little more about her. So she was, as I mentioned, Aboriginal. Her culture is obviously really connected to the landscape. We can tie that back to the Native Americans. And the area where she was living have been inhabited for 40,000 years. 40,000 years, and so a long history. So lots of kind of dramatic lands of grasslands, arch-rocked formations, deserts. So of course we have the Europeans coming in the 1920s into Australia and taking over. But in 1976, the Aboriginal land rights were granted. So she was able to live independently, not kind of isolated in a community that had been, or isolated in an area that she had been told to live in. Okay, so you should recognize something like this, right? So this is the batik, which was the Indonesian, right? Indonesian style of fabric paint creation or patterning, which we know as Dutch wax fabric, right, which we connect back to Yinka Shinabare's After Fragonard. Anyway, so in the late 1970s, she began to work in this medium, and she actually started a group of women, kind of a collective they would make these batik fabrics, and she called it the Utopia Women's Batik Group. And Utopia is the area where she lived, and that was the name of her area, which is interesting. So eventually there was this summer project where they brought in all these kind of European painting tools and kind of a summer painting project for the natives who were living in the area. And so it wound up in Utopia, which is where she lived, and they delivered these acrylic paints and materials, and they returned and they saw what was made, what had been created in their absence. And so they found it, quote, abstract and richly expressive. And there was a group exhibition helped, and Kanagaware's work was the standout for that collection, for that exhibition, and her work was chosen for the catalog cover. And I mentioned before she'd been painting for a long time. She was an established elder of her community. She painted on bodies, on people, painted in response to her ritual dreamings. So this was not, even though the acrylic paint, which she worked in her later career, was new to her, painting was not. And so we don't, obviously, if we look back at our piece, this is not a work of representative art, right? It's not figural. It is really influenced more along lines of by the traditional ritual painting that she had done, and the natural environment, which we noted before, was really influential. Okay, so here she is again. When she kind of became known, there was a period of great change in Australia, you know, more opening up for the original peoples who were living there before the European settlers came in, and an embrace of Aboriginal culture by actually the Western population. You know, it's like, oh, look at all these things that these people make. So there's some question about the intent of that sometimes. So that was happening in Australia. On the world stage, there was a growth and an interest in non-Western art. And we've seen that happen before, but there's a really, really hot art market, which we'll talk a little bit about as well when we get to Basquiat. Here's a video.
Emily Ngwari is Australia's highest ranking Aboriginal artist according to the Australian Indigenous Art Market Index. She began painting in 1989 at 79 years of age, and over the following 7 years created more than 4,000 individual paintings. In May 2007, Lawson Menzies sold Earth's Creation 1995 for $1,056,000 against a pre-sale estimate of $500,000 to $700,000.
Yeah, that's not nothing. Over $1 million for this painting when it was sold. It was expected to go maybe for $500,000.
It was the first time an Australian Aboriginal artwork had exceeded $1 million at public sale, and still stands as the highest price ever paid for the work of an Australian female artist. The work, created in 4 panels measuring a total of 6.32 by 2.75 metres, was created during 1995 in a bush workshop coordinated by her nephew Fred Torres. The wildly colourful work was produced by double dipping brushes into pots of layered paint, thereby creating floral impressions with alternately coloured variegated outlines. Despite her advanced age, Emily's physicality was evident. Painting with a brush in each hand, she pounded them down onto the canvas, spreading the bristles and leaving the coagulating paint around the neck of the brush to create depth and form. Along with her Admajara clanswomen from Utopia, Emily participated in the yearly ceremonial activity at the onset of the summer rainy season. Paintings like this, produced in summer, were usually more colourful and highly charged with energy than those done in the dry season, due to the keyed-up expectation of rain, the excitement of its arrival, and the explosive flowering of the desert.
So some of those words that he used were really good, you know, explosive, gestural, highly physical. So that's part of the reason why I wanted you to listen to, because his descriptions were quite good, which of course, as you know, can be helpful to you when you are writing. There's another video here, which I'm not going to play right now, but I would recommend that you go and look at it. It lasts 3 minutes. Okay, that's it.